So what I hope to cover is just briefly, what is it and how is it different? Who can it be helpful for? And also thinking a little bit about how for some people they might find it a little bit more difficult. How we can use it to support people in terms of setting goals, because I know that's something that comes up on a regular basis as being quite challenging, because people maybe have never really thought about their goals and things before. I'll talk briefly a bit about the Miracle question, which is a question that they use a lot in solution focused work. Working with this idea of shoulds is something that I think is really helpful, and it doesn't matter who you're working with. I think it can be a really helpful way of exploring kind of their thoughts and their values, and also thinking about our own shoulds and the shoulds that we put on ourselves just as human beings. And I'll finish with just thinking about some of the key elements that kind of can be helpful in holding in mind when working with people. So I personally use solution focused skills, but I'm not formally trained, just to make you aware. So this really is just a very kind of brief introduction to some of the skills that I've found quite helpful, and some that you might find helpful in your various different roles. It's not about you having to do therapy, but some of these skills might be helpful. And like I say, in things like setting goals and just generally being supportive in conversations and helping people to maybe think about things in a slightly different way when they're struggling. So solution focused therapy, or solution focused brief therapy, it's often used very interchangeably. It was developed in the late 1970s, and what kind of makes it different to other therapies that it's more future focused and goal directed, and focuses on solutions rather than the problems that clients might bring. So moving from that, what's wrong, to what's right. So in other therapies like maybe psychodynamic therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy, we might be kind of really focusing on the problems. How did they develop? Where did they come from? What happens in and around them? But this doesn't really spend huge amounts of time really thinking about that. So it's really thinking about kind of what's going right and what's next. And they do this by supporting the person to build on solutions, on the strengths and existing things that they've used before in the past, and also that real focus on their desired future, what they want their future to look like. So that's kind of the main focus. The client is really seen as the expert, as the theory believes that we inherently possess these skills and resources to solve our own problems. But what we often need is a mind of another to maybe talk those things through, and that can really help bring out those solutions for us. And the therapy doesn't really explore sort of difficult past experiences, but focuses on the things that are going well during maybe a difficult time. And I've personally found that the people that we do tend to work with at times do need that space to be able to sit and be with their problems and the difficulties they faced, and acknowledge sometimes how the problems were created. I would personally say that it's not about dismissing their story, their pain, or their distress. And I think, you know, we do need to hear that. But if that's all that we ever talk about, it can be then hard to kind of find ways to move forward. So I feel that it's about finding that middle ground, so giving space to what people are experiencing, but not allow them to remain saturated in that sort of stuckness, really. And this is why some of these skills might be helpful in helping them to become more unstuck. So it can be used alongside other models and other ways of working in terms of therapy. And it can support people to really kind of notice and acknowledge and develop their own problem solving skills, that they will then hopefully be able to continue and use in other parts of their life. So it won't just be about this particular thing that they may be coming to you with. What we what the therapy and the idea behind it is that hope then that they're able to then utilize those skills across various different parts of their lives. And although there are many positives and really helpful aspects to solution focused therapy, it's really important to acknowledge that there are also some kind of limitations. So some people have criticised it as being maybe a bit sort of simplistic and may gloss over complex problems and experiences such as multiple adversity or trauma, by focusing too quickly on small solutions, missing sort of those deeper, more systemic issues such as abuse and racism and poverty. And if you were around for the power threat meaning framework session that I did, if we think about that really highlighted the importance of the wider context in which we sit in and that our difficulties are sat within. And they don't arise from nowhere. And community and society and politics do play a huge part in people's struggles. So sometimes that might feel, for some people, that might miss something. Also, some people might describe it as feeling maybe invalidating. It might make people feel like their significant pain or despair is minimized if the worker pushes to solutions too quickly. Especially if the client wants to process their experiences. So again, it's not about saying this is a one size fits all. Again, it's about kind of using things at certain points where you think, oh, do you know what, this might be helpful to maybe think about something in a solution focused way. Other kind of limitations that have been discussed are kind of those individual factors. So it can be less effective for individuals maybe with very low self-esteem or maybe difficulty concentrating, or where they struggle to focus on self sort of expertise and be able to look to themselves because they don't trust themselves. Also, it requires a bit of a commitment really to want to make actual change and take active steps. So being motivated is important. So for people that are maybe in that still thinking about things being different, it might be that it's not the right time for them. So there has to be that kind of real motivation to want to change. And again, the limited evidence base doesn't mean it doesn't work. It's just, again, where funding is put sometimes, and where that funding comes from. So the government have invested and there's quite a lot of funding in looking at CBT, for example, but maybe some of the other therapies and the other skills and areas that we might use and models maybe don't receive so much focus and attention. I would say it's probably less suitable when the individual wants to understand the root causes, because, you know, fundamentally it doesn't really look at that. So if, let's say, for example, you were working with somebody and they were curious about different therapies, if they really wanted to understand their kind of experiences and sit with that and make sense of that, then another therapy would more than likely be much better. Also, individuals who want to talk in depth about those past experiences and process what's happened to them, because this isn't really a processing type of therapy. And it can be helpful for some people that may be experiencing suicide ideation. But again, I think it's kind of reading the person, really. It's like with anything that we do in terms of mental health. There are always pros and cons, and equally sometimes things will help some and not others. And I think gently exploring just maybe some of these different ideas with people that you're working with through the use of some of these skills that we'll be talking about today will indicate if those tools would be helpful for them in the work that you're doing. And I would just think of those skills as just additional tools, really, that in your kit that you can draw on occasionally, rather than being this idea that you must use it with every person that you work with. So the focus and value. So it's very much a client-led discovery. Focus on what is working. So even at times where things are really tough, or what was working in those times, what enabled you to get dressed that day or brush your teeth that day, or it's finding those little, what I call glimmers, building on the strengths and resources that inherently and most of us will have in some way or form. Sometimes it's just supporting people to identify those and think about them and recognize them. It's very future orientated, so it's really thinking about, okay, so how do you want your future to look? How would it be different? What would it look like? What would it feel like? And using the client's own words. So I think we're quite good at being able to do this generally, but I think it can be really helpful again, because it's kind of endorsing what they're saying and their expertise. And although solutions-focused therapy doesn't explicitly focus on values, I think values are very much used to strengthen and build upon sort of motivation for change. So things that are really valued to that individual can be huge supports in that motivator to want things to be different. Numerical questions, scaling questions and exceptions all draw out the person's values, and you'll probably find that you will pick up on various different things that you could then maybe use and think about with them, and we'll explore all of those today. So goal settings, I think is something that does come up regularly, regardless of kind of what area you're working in. Can be really difficult to set goals, especially short-term goals, because we know that our resources are, we don't have huge amounts of time to spend with people, so it can be really challenging, especially when people are arriving and they're feeling like many aspects of their life, that they're finding that challenging and they're struggling with a great deal. And as we know, as human beings, we're not straightforward. We're never kind of generally dealing with just one thing at a time. So it could be hard for people, understandably, to see where to start. And also, we can sometimes be left feeling a bit like that. Oh, where do we go with all of this that's going on for somebody? So helping people to really narrow down what it is they want support with, I think, is really key. And solution-focused therapy use a number of different tools to support this. So SMART goals is one of them. And what the SMART goals is really wanting to support you to do with the individual is really think about the specific goals. So really thinking about it in detail. Wants those goals to be measurable so we can then find out if it's working or helping. It has to be achievable. It has to be achievable, because again, it's that us sitting with the reality of what we can achieve in the sessions that we might be seeing somebody for, but also thinking about those achievable goals that can continue on outside of the work that you're doing. Has to be relevant to what they really want to change. So it's great to have ideas around, oh, I think this might be helpful for somebody, but if it doesn't feel relevant for them, it's not going to be as helpful. And it has to be time limited. So we really do need to be thinking of, okay, in what kind of time frame are we going to be aiming for here? And making sure that their best hopes for their time with you is realistic and within your gift, really. I can remember working with lots of people who sort of come and think you're going to solve everything and we can magic lots of things away, and oh gosh, I wish we could. But it's sort of like really helping them to sit with that reality, and us to sit with what we can realistically achieve about those things when we first meet with people. Just going into a little bit more detail with the SMART goals. So specific, so really identifying exactly what do they want to achieve. So e.g. to be happier is a very broad, and what we know is happiness looks different for everybody. And how will they know what they need to do to be happier? So instead, we might be wanting to break that down with them and explore what that means. So what would you be doing if you were happier? What would that look like? What would that feel like? And really starting to maybe break it down. So it might be, if I was happier, I would feel more able to go in and interact with friends, and I wouldn't feel so lonely. So really kind of breaking it down into what are the parts of that which are going to be really helpful for them to think about. And I think thinking with them about what would it look like, what would you be doing that's different, can really support that. Measurables, so how will you know you've succeeded? So asking with them, what would you be hoping to notice? And also thinking about with them about how they would identify if they feel that it's working or not, or helping or not. So what kind of things would they look for? Achievable, so the goal is realistic and in the current situation that they're finding themselves in and what they want to work on. And is that's something that they feel that they can commit to doing with you? If it's something that they're kind of not sure, or I don't think I could commit to going to the gym 5 days a week. Oh, okay. So what could you commit to? So again, it's thinking about it being achievable. Relevant. So does the goal matter to you? Does it align with the future that you're wanting for yourself? And again, so we're really trying to make sure that we're working on the right thing. And when will you achieve this by? So for example, if somebody wanted to feel less anxious, so a SMART goal might be, this week I will practice deep breathing for 5 minutes 3 times a day for a week, and I'll keep a record of how I feel following each time I do the breathing exercises. So again, we're just getting them to actively also notice what it is that they're doing. And this process and way of creating goals can really help to, you know, narrow down the steps. And actually what I've found in the past is people will actually come up with their own ideas and their own steps. And what we're doing is we're facilitating that through just having these conversations. But also if we go kind of off in a different direction, which I know can happen for lots of us and many clients, because this is what our brains do. What we can do is, you know, when we've got these set achievable goals that we're working with somebody, we can gently bring that person back and say, actually, is this going to help us achieve the goal that we were hoping to work on together? It also really brings into mind sort of the need for action and kind of urgency in terms of this. We haven't got a long period of time to be working with somebody, and that can be, again, just helpful in getting people to really start to think about it. And I think these processes are often really helpful in various different ways, especially if they've never really thought about these things before, this way of thinking. And when sort of setting these goals, we can ask these sort of follow-up questions. So what outcomes do you want to see from coming to see me? What do you want to happen? What do you want to notice? Or what is the best hope for what will be different as a result of working with me? Because I think people genuinely sometimes don't really have an idea. So really supporting them to think about it. What difference would it make to you to attain this, to be able to achieve it? How would you notice the change it made to your life? So what would you think you might start seeing that's different? And have there been times in your life when some parts of the goals have already happened? So exploring these questions will help you to see if the individual is able to work in this way. For a start, I think that's really helpful. It might be that they really struggle, and this is the case. And if it is the case, then keeping the goal more general might be the essential part. So, for example, if somebody's coming in for, let's say, for regulating emotions, it might be then just focusing on psychoeducation and how the brain works and emotions, and trying out new strategies and skills, and maybe not sort of really boiling down into individual bits. It's basically just vital that we meet the individual where they're at and not try and fit them into a box, because that won't work for them, as this will make them feel worse or add to those feelings of failure, which I know is very common for a lot of clients that we work with, because that feeling of, oh, I failed at something else, I can't do something else. And I think when we're very time limited, we need to not be afraid to bring that reality in the room, especially if we have a number of things that they want to work on. And we need to be really clear with them that we're unlikely to be able to achieve that, but we can certainly support them to make a start on the thing that is most important to them, and that they might be able to use those things to support the other areas that they're struggling with at the same time. So I don't know if any of you have come across the Miricle question before. There's lots of different types of them out there, but they're all sort of like of a similar vein, really, to elicit a certain response from people. So it's really helpful, I think, in the early stages of working with people, as it can really, again, help them set realistic goals, but really think about things in maybe kind of, if they're somebody who uses imagery quite a lot. And also what we find when people are really struggling, our motivation levels can be non-existent. They can be really, really low, and understandably lacking for people when they're coming into us. So because of all the life challenges that they've experienced, but I think what this can do is really help them to start to think about it in a slightly different way. And it might elicit some motivation to want things to change. So we might say to them, so this may seem like a strange question to ask, but please bear with me. Imagine going about your life as normal and heading off to sleep at the usual time, but unknown to you during the night, something happens, a miracle. When you wake up the following day, something exciting has happened. The very problem that brought you to see me today is no longer there. What would it be the very first difference that you would notice in your life? So really getting them to really think about it. And there are a number of different ways that you can introduce it. You don't have to use this example. So you can say something like, assume your problem or problems have been solved. What is different? Or assume your problems have gone, and what does that mean to you? What would it look like? The magic wand is often used, to be fair, in all different iterations of it. But basically, it's just finding a way to elicit this kind of desired thinking about what would it look like, because that can really support somebody to find motivation, but also identify what it is they want to be different. And it's about finding your own way and your own language that feels comfortable for you to introduce it to somebody. But I think it can be a really helpful tool in our box to use with people and ourselves, actually, sometimes. So some questions that we can use in terms of in following up and exploring with the person, what would it mean for them, is really important in helping the person to think about the details, and these follow-ups can include various different things. Again, this isn't exactly what you should say, but you can think about variations. So how will you know the miracle's happened? What would a normal day look like now if this happened? So first thing that comes to my mind if somebody's really depressed is not finding it hard to get out of bed. You know, it could be those sort of things that they notice. What would you be able to do now? And what would your life look like? So really, again, really trying to think about the details of what would be different. What might you think? How might you feel? What might you do that's different? And what would others notice about you? I find this is a really interesting question about you. What would make them aware that things are different or better? And what activities would you do now that you didn't do before? Because again, that might kind of bring about a sense of things that they might have found enjoyable in the past and might want to engage with again in the future. It just really can help draw out what it is that people want to be different, and maybe kind of give you the key to the areas that they really actually want to change, rather than things that maybe they've been told they should change. So again, I think they can be really, really helpful. This is something else that's used. I think mind maps are really helpful anyway. I tend to use them for most things. I just find them really helpful because I'm a very visual person. But what it can really help and support somebody to do is really think about, okay, where might we go with different ideas? How, let's brainstorm together and think about, okay, so you've come and said that you really don't want to be lonely anymore. That it's really hard for you. What things might we do then to start what would we be able to do to start to change that? What would we actively need to do? And again, it's just getting people to think through easy things that they might be able to do, or things that might feel a bit more challenging. But again, it's kind of really supporting them to think about that desired outcome. So it might be to say yes to more invites out from friends, especially if you're somebody who, you're lonely, but at the same time, you never say yes to invites. Okay, so what would it be like to say yes to going out a little bit more? You might want to invite friends and family over for a movie night. Start asking friends to meet up for coffee, because again, we're not very good as people to kind of express what we would like to do. So maybe we need to start putting ourselves out there, and thinking about, okay, I need to ask people. Do an evening course, and then you might find things like this bit at the top here. Thinking about getting a dog. Well, if I get a dog, I could join dog training classes, or join a dog walking club. So again, it's thinking with somebody to think about the different kind of steps that they might want to take. And I think, again, visually, it can be really helpful. And then we can think about what's achievable in those things, and use all those things that we've been thinking about, and as we continue to think about in supporting them to move forward. I think exception questions can be also really helpful. It's just another way of opening up people's thinking, I think, and that's what a lot of these things are doing, really, is really opening up people's ability to think about things in a slightly different way. So you will have come across examples of these in maybe some other bite-sized trainings, especially the self-harm and suicide session, that I use these a lot with people and on myself, as we as humans get stuck in what solution-focused therapy called problem-saturated talk, which can understandably keep us feeling quite stuck. So getting people to think about the times when they didn't have that difficulty or struggle, or times when it was easier to manage, can really help people to identify the things that helped them in the past that might help them now. And again, what we're doing is really supporting and being alongside somebody to kind of really think about that. Sometimes you might just get, I don't know. But again, if we sit with that for a little while and think, well, okay, what I'm hearing is things have been really tough for you for a long time. Okay, was there a particular day where you felt able to go for a walk? What was it about that day that made that feel easier? And again, it's just those little glimmers. It doesn't have to be a time when things were perfect, because we need to let go of any ideas that it was ever perfect, because we know it doesn't exist and life doesn't work that way. But maybe just, again, that what was better then to now, and what did they do? How did they cope and manage? What did they draw on to get through it? What were the things that helped, and who was around? And I think sometimes, again, we can support people to think about, oh, actually, my friend, I saw my friend quite a lot at that time. And again, maybe it just helps them to think, maybe I need to be more in touch with my friends. This can really help then shift our perspectives about things that don't remain constant, and also highlight their strengths and the things that have been positive and that have helped in the past. So it's not about saying things are not tough now, but it's about, okay, what can we use from those other experiences that can maybe help now, but also it gives people that sense of hope. If it's easy, you can ask them about a single memory that they had, maybe in childhood, where they felt joy or happiness or a positive feeling, no matter how fleeting. It can literally be anything, just to think about a time where it was different. And like I say, a lot of people will struggle with this. So what we might do then for some people, especially people that have experienced trauma, because what we know, we can have huge gaps in memory if you've experienced trauma, understandably as a response to what they went through. So what we can do is think about maybe, okay, what did you do yesterday? Was there anything about yesterday that was better than today, or is there anything today that feels that's gone better today or felt different today? So again, we can eat anything that can support somebody to really start to think about it, because we tend to, when we're struggling, we kind of see the world through a sort of a certain lens, don't we? Everything's either all good or all bad. And I've had people come in to me and say, well, everything's rubbish. Just everything is absolutely rubbish. Because what we're not able to do is pick up on, actually sometimes that fluctuates and it might be slightly different on slightly different days. And it supports people to start to maybe notice that their moods and their feelings and things do shift and there are changes. And again, it just brings it to their conscious mind to maybe start looking for those things that they've probably not done that for a little while because it's hard. But again, these sort of thinking about these things will help bring this into their awareness and their conscious mind. And actually, they will probably start to notice things. They'll start to get into a bit of a way of thinking and noticing on this sort of maybe on a daily basis. Scaling questions, I think, are really helpful as well. And I think probably lots of different therapies use this as well. But again, I do think it can be really helpful for both you and the person to find that sort of clarification again on the issue being presented. It helps the person to really focus on where they are and where they want to be ideally, and think about those small changes. So example, maybe somebody with depression. So on a scale of 1 to 10, so 0 means you feel completely hopeless, 10 means you're full of hope and energy. Where are you today? If they say 0, and then ask them what they think would help them get to a 1. And how would you notice that you would get to a 1, and what might support you to get to a 1? Or if they say that they've been a 5, what did it look like, and what would help you get to build up to a 5? Or what does a 5 feel like? Again, it's just supporting them to open up their thinking and really think about sort of some of our realities, really. If they say a 4, what is helping them to be a 4? Focusing on what it is that's supporting them to be there. What have they done today that might have helped them to reach a 4? And again, it's about how we support them to move up those scales. And again, it's just opening up that thinking. And using the goals that they've kind of set out, that they wish to work on, you can again use the scaling questions to help them visualize where they are currently in terms of their goal, and where they would like to be. And again, we can be realistic with them and say, actually, you might find by the time we finish working together, we might not be at 10. Actually, what we'd hope is that we've moved a little bit up the scale. So again, it's keeping that realistic, because obviously everybody wants to work with someone and think everything's going to be fine at the end of it, but realistically, logically, that's unlikely. So we might say, on a scale of 0 to 10, how close do you feel to achieving your goal at the moment? And again, they might say 0. So okay, so how do we get onto that first bit of the scale? How do we get onto 1? What would it take to move to a higher rating on the scale? How do you know that you'd got there? So what would you notice? How would you know that we've started to move up that scale in the work that we're doing? What specific actions or steps can you take to progress closer to your goal? And again, that's where you might want a mind map with somebody. And are there any resources or support that you need to increase your rating on the scale? So again, I think that can be really helpful, because we're often thinking about people as individuals, but actually what we know is people often need meaningful activities, connection, all those things that make life living. So it's really helpful to think about all the resources and support that they might need as well that will support them to achieve those goals. And again, these are things that they may not have even contemplated or thought about before. Now, shoulds. I want you to take a minute and think about how many shoulds you have said to yourself this week or today, or should nots, because actually we say we shouldn't do certain things, like oh, I shouldn't have eaten that cake, I shouldn't have had that biscuit. Shoulds, I would say, I don't think I've met a single person that hasn't got their own list of shoulds and ideas about what they should be or shouldn't be, or what they should do or shouldn't do. And I've just tried to kind of put a few up here. I think are the ones that I find that I hear quite commonly, either with friends or people that I might be working with. So that I should be more, well, what does be more look like? But I've heard a lot of people say that. I should be a better friend. I should be happy. Oh, should be happy. Well, that is a huge pressure to put on ourselves, isn't it? I should do better. I should cope better is a massive one. I think that we will often come across people having that feeling. I should be perfect. I should be better at my job. I should stop being too much, or I should always be productive. I should always be kind. I should get more sleep, I think is a common one. I should lose weight, I hear a lot. I should eat better. I should exercise more. I should own my own home. I should be earning more money. There's so many shoulds and should nots, but we don't often acknowledge that we're holding these almost imaginary rules to and beliefs around what we think we should and shouldn't be. And I think solution focused ways of working really sort of includes that looking at shoulds. And I think it's used a lot in cognitive behavior therapy as well, because we think about things and they might be called cognitive distortions, but I just call them shoulds. Also, we humans commonly used must statements as well. I must do this and I must do that. And I think we're often unconsciously putting huge amounts of pressures on ourselves. How many of us, I wonder, as a whole, lists of shoulds come up in our daily life? I mean, I know I've got loads of them that. But again, we're just often unaware that they're there, but they're an invisible pressure that we're carrying around with us. And I think bringing shoulds into our conscious awareness can be really, really helpful. So when we're working or talking with someone and you notice they refer to, oh, I should quite a lot, I think it can be really helpful to just do that gentle noticing with them. I'm noticing you say I should a lot. I'm curious as to where that's coming from. Who says you should do that? Often, actually, there is some point in their lives where they felt that message was given to them. So again, it's bringing that awareness into their conscious mind. It can be really, really helpful. Many people who are struggling will often say, I should be able to cope better. And the why might be because they think they're a burden, or because they think others are coping better. So we often, don't we, on social media, we think, oh my God, their house was blown away, but actually they're coping really well. But what we're not seeing is what's going on underneath. So again, we get these ideas. Who says that you should be coping better? And that could be a societal message that we're receiving. Or a family member, oh, you should cope better with this, or you should just get on with it, just move on. Thinking about the could or the like or I want to is much more helpful way, because actually we're placing ourselves in the middle of that. I want to do something. I should. Are you going to feel motivated around I shoulds? I'm not motivated around I shoulds, and neither will are the people we're working with. But if we really think about what I'd like to do is, or what I want to do is so much more helpful and can be really supportive in remotivating people as well. And I think we often find as human beings that we can feel at odds with the world. And it's not uncommon that we try and live our lives in the way we feel that we should, or the way society tells us we should. And therefore we're not living an authentic life or a life that we wish to live. So that can understandably really cause that inner conflict in us, and have a huge impact on our well-being if we're kind of living our lives in this idea of all of the shoulds rather than things that we want, and what are valuable to us, and what sits within our values. So I've included a link in the resources at the end. Obviously, I'll send this out to everybody who's attended today as well. And there will be links on the website, the Devon Mental Health Alliance website as well. And it's just a sheet really, that it's got a table where you can like fill in shoulds. It might be helpful for you if you're sat here going, oh, I do this a lot. It might be helpful for maybe some of the clients who are working with, and maybe have a go at filling them out together and just thinking about it. So I've included that in the resources. And again, this just will help tie into their values and their beliefs. And I know I've used this example in the past in other trainings, but I grew up with this idea that I should get married and I should have children. And the why did I think that was because that's what I was told that means that you're successful, and that you're achieving in life. The who, so who said that? It was my family. It was a family narrative. Did this sit with my own values? No, it didn't, because I valued people that didn't have children, that weren't married. I didn't see that as part of their value. I valued people who didn't have children, who weren't married. And so recognizing that and being able to let go of that, it meant that I could let go of any sense of shame and sense of failure that I had because I'm not married with children. But actually, it was a message that I hadn't even realized that I'd just taken in, but it became a should. Oh, but I should be married. I should have children. Letting go of that. Oh my God, the freedom of being able to let go of that was hugely impactful and powerful. So what we're doing is just supporting people to really think about, okay, where are these things coming from? So I think also in terms of thinking about motivation as well. So wanting to lose weight, I think, is a classic one. So I've personally wanted to lose weight in the past and for most of my life. The should was I should be thinner. The why was because I will feel better about myself. Who says that? That was a message I was getting from society. You know, this idea that I should be thinner, and then people will value me more and I would fit in more, and therefore I'll be happier. And actually that really wasn't the case, and I just dieted for most of my life. So what I did is I changed the should, and really thought about it, because actually what I came to recognize is I really value people, and you know, it doesn't matter what people's shapes and sizes are, and I don't judge people, so why should I be judging myself? Do I really believe in it? And I didn't. So then actually what it became was actually I want to eat healthier. So it became I want to eat healthier because it will support me to feel better in my body. So it changed it completely. My motivation changed completely, and actually I was able to lose weight and keep the weight off. So again, it's helping people's minds sort of change in the ways that their sort of mindset is, and thinking about things in different ways. And it's far, far more motivating for people because it truly means something, and it's not about imagined judgment. And also, it's not uncommon for people to come sometimes into our services through well-intended others making that suggestion. So well-intended family members or doctors or other services saying, actually, we think you need to work on this. And actually, it's not actually what that person wants to work on. So, you know, that also can become part of a why there's a resistance to change if they're not there working on the things that feel meaningful for them. It's because they were told, actually, this is what we think you need. This is what will be helpful for you. And I think, you know, we can never underestimate how disempowering that is for people. I had somebody come to work with me once in therapy, and I asked them in the first session, so why are you here? I was told that this is what I needed. Okay, so what do you want to work on? They think I need to work on X, Y, and Z. And I was like, okay, do you want to work on those things? They were like, well, no, not really. It wasn't important to that person. But we did work together, but we worked on something very different. So again, shoulds, I think, are brilliant, and we should be challenging ourselves with them every day as well, because I'm sure a lot of you in this training will be relating to some of those things that I've said. So the key elements and the things, if you really want to try and work in this way, is to focus on what they can do and not what they can't. You shared with me how hard it was for you for this last week and that you struggled to do anything. What's helped you summon the strength to come today? Acknowledging that people rocked up. Hugely powerful. What has enabled you to come today? What has that motivation been? Given that you've really struggled, you said you've struggled all week, but you came today. What helped you to do that? How have you managed to keep going while suffering for so long? That is no easy feat when you're suffering with your mental health and your well-being. And there will be things that they will have been doing that's enabled them to keep going. And again, it's finding those little glimmers, and then we can build on those little glimmers of hope. Because even in that questioning, you're really highlighting that they've achieved something. You know, they're still here. That's an achievement. They've come to your session. That is an achievement. How can we build on that? If the person immediately responds, and this isn't uncommon, because I do it too, sometimes my head genuinely goes blank. If they respond with, I don't know, just sitting and allowing that silence to remain. Give them a minute to think. I find more often than not, they will get there. They will get there in some way or form. And you know, and again, it's about saying there's no right and wrong answer, and it's reassuring them it's not about getting this right or wrong. What's coming into your mind when I ask you that question? It will help them to kind of get there and open up that bit of thinking. Acknowledging that they've turned up and alone is significant. Acknowledge and celebrating the small wins is key in moving forward towards a more solution-focused way of thinking and being. And I think this is something that I've really tried to start to do for myself, is that really, like, we need to look at the small wins. Okay, we might not be changing the world, but there are small wins, and we're achieving these wins on a daily basis, and so are our clients. And I think it's really helpful to just support them to start thinking about that and acknowledging that a little bit more. And it will then hopefully lead on to that snowballing and happening more and more and more for people. So the resources that I've added, so there's the should questionnaire that I've put on there. I've put examples of the Miricle question on there for you. I also found a really good free self-help online solution therapy book, which is something either you could have a look at and maybe explore, but also if you're getting a sense that somebody might be open to working in this way, and it might be, again, something that you can share with them. I've also added online place where you can get hold of all of the sort of worksheets around the Miracle question, exceptions, scaling questions, and SMART goals as well. Hopefully they will be helpful. I've also the institution of solution focused therapy, just in case you wanted to do any more reading or explore it. And again, I've put on some sort of YouTube videos as well, because I know some people, if you're like me, I much prefer to watch a video than read a huge document. So I've put a couple of videos up there as well, of 3 different ways to use the exception question and the Miracle question one. And also a link to solution focused brief therapy, 100 key points and techniques. So hopefully you might find some of those helpful, because obviously today's been a very whistle-stop tour, and I've kind of had a lot to cover. And there's also I don't know if any of you have come across the oceanpdf.com. Brilliant resource. They often have lots of books on there that you can access for free. They ask for a donation of maybe a coffee or something, but you don't have to. But they have a huge amount of really brilliantly published books on there, and I found out this solution focused therapy diamond free book if this was something you wanted to do a bit of more reading around for yourself. So hopefully you will find those helpful.